You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Curlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Chad the Dad Rocky. What's up, Chad?
Hey, Craig. Not a whole lot today. What's up with you? What's new?
Not a whole lot, man. Officially closed on that Subject 2 house in Coeur d'Alene, which is good. We're kind of working on getting that rented, have tons and tons of showings, and finally got that thing filled, which was nice for a grand total loss of about $900 a month. So that's amazing.
Appreciation, right?
Yeah, it's definitely an appreciation play. And, I think my mindset a little bit on building wealth and financial independence has changed, where rather than just try to stack a bunch of cash flowing houses, it's really hard. It's really, really hard to cash flow in the areas that I like to invest in these days. It's not impossible, but it's the days are not here anymore where you can pick up 3 houses and cash flow $2,000 each and have $6,000 of cash flow. It's now, I think what the play is actually buying properties in areas that you're pretty confident are going to appreciate, hold on to them for 5 to 10 years, and then reposition those assets into cash flowing assets and take that equity into a cash flowing play. I think that's kind of the way that I'm moving, because I think that's the most effective strategy at this point.
No, I love that. It's it's a retirement plan, right? You're in your working years, so you work now to get cash to survive, and then you're just setting yourself up for whenever you want to retire. Now you take that and you transition it to replace your job with cash flowing assets. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
you're onto something.
Yeah, I'm onto something here. I just think a lot of people play the cash flow game first. It's like cash flow. And I think the game is switched a bit where it's like you can just kind of break even as long as it's not hurting you to hold on. Eventually they'll go up, and eventually you will get. Eventually you can sell those and put them into cash flowing markets. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I know Hugh, our guest here, is in a cash flowing market. You're going to hear some crazy stuff. This is one of our wildest stories from I think Hugh's just kind of a wild guy. Like, he's not crazy, like getting hammered and stuff like that, but like, he's just like a very interesting person. He worked a lot of his, he's not, if you look at him, you would never guess that he is like Chinese unless you're like kind of really look at him. But I think he's like a half Chinese guy. He speaks fluent Mandarin. He worked in China, somehow took that position, took over his dad's company. And I don't know, it's an insane story. And so, and then he eventually started investing in multifamily real estate, and he's just absolutely crushing it. And so, the biggest thing that I got is how old his dad is. And so listen carefully on this show as you listen through it. I don't want to spill the details, but go listen in and figure out how old his dad is. And it's just absolutely nuts. And so, Chad, what do you think? We bring Hugh onto the show?
Let's do it. Great story.
This episode of Investify was brought to you by the Fi Team, a team of investor-friendly agents that service all 50 states. If you are looking to house hack, to invest, grow your portfolio, and want a true investor-friendly agent on your side, go to thefiteam.com and click Get Started, and we can't wait to have a good conversation with you.
Hugh Carnahan, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today, dude?
I'm doing great. Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. This is exciting.
Thanks for having me on. Do you got a shotgun in the background or what?
Not here. I do have some in the room.
Yeah, just not in the background. Actually, in the foreground, as he cocks it, sit it in his lap.
That's right.
Yeah, awesome, Hugh. Well, hey, it's a pleasure to have you on, dude. Why don't you kind of take us back to the the genesis story of Hugh and when you kind of made that switch from W-2 life and entrepreneurial life?
Yeah, just normal guy. So I'll back up just a little bit before then because I had an unfair skill set and it's definitely learnable. But basically, at the time that I made the mindset shift, I went to college. I did all the things that, we're told that we're supposed to do, right? Go to school, get good grades so you can get a good job, right? So I did all that and ended up getting into a career. And I had an IT background and I ended up going into IT in corporate America. So I had made it, right? Got the big boy job, if you will. And my father passes away, and this is in 2014. And I end up moving even further away. I moved to California for a bit. And after about 2 years, I ended up going back home to work for the company. And the company was at that time in a state of disarray. It was 2 to 3 years since my father had passed. And I started Googling how to save failing business on the internet a bunch and consuming all the content and media that I could. And I came across a video of a guy called Paul Akers, and it says lean is simple. And he had created a framework called 2-second lean. And it's a very easy way to systematize your company and processes. And it teaches some basic fundamentals.
Dang, Hugh, I'm sorry to hear that your father passed away, man. Like that really stinks. I can't imagine what you must have gone through kind of at such a young age. Can you kind of tell us when that happened? Like, give us a year if you can.
Yeah, so it wasn't too young. I think I was 24 years old when it happened. And my father was born in 1929. So kind of as a teenager, maybe 13, 14, I was like, my dad's old, he's not,
Wait, your dad was born in 1929?
1929. Yeah. So my father's parents are the age of most people's of our age's grandparents or older. So
Dude, my grandfather is younger than your dad.
yeah,
Which is nuts.
yeah. Most of the time they are.
Wow.
So he was a part of the generation that grew up in the Great Depression, and I had a very different upbringing than most Americans did, and an older upbringing, if you will.
For sure. Okay. Dang. So, so he had a business all the way up until kind of his last days then.
Yeah, actually, technically the last day he was in a hospital, but the day before he was running around. He had a little white cup, a styrofoam cup of coffee he would get from the lunchroom, and we would just kind of drink the coffee and stroll around. And he was a manufacturing genius. He graduated bottom of his class, ADHD. He was dyslexic, and at the time of his death, he had multi-million-dollar company between manufacturing in China and headquartered out of the United States, and it was a pretty impressive operation. He built it all himself, so it was pretty incredible. Yeah, that's the double-edged sword. When he passed away, that was kind of aimlessly floating around, and just on the fact that they had a high income or high margin, or I don't even think they had high margins. They just had no debt that they were able to kind of blindly bumble through and still be operational by the time I made it on scene.
Well, so they spent two years kind of just floating, and then you came back and righted the ship, and you found this, or no?
Yeah, so it was I probably came back in 2017, and it wasn't until 2018 that I found this kind of doctrine, which is called 2-second lean, and I started Googling it and applying it, and it just laid out a very, very repeatable, straightforward, normal way that you can automate and systematize any company and get it turned around and on the right track. And I followed exactly what that thing said, and was able to, turn stuff around. I mean, some of the stuff was like, I know we're getting off track for real estate and investing here, but it'll come back later. But, we took a manufacturing process that took 22 days and we brought it to 3 hours.
Wow.
And that saves that company $7 million a year, every year forever, and that's not adjusted for inflation. That's 2018 dollars. Now you take that and you just say, the customer's already priced in that sloppiness, that waste, and you don't have to raise prices to compete against your competition now. And you're delivering higher quality on time, pissing the customers off a lot less. And so manufacturing, they're some of the smartest people I know, but it's one of the worst industries to be in because the margins are so thin and you can easily go bankrupt. And so they've developed very robust systems out of necessity to keep them alive.
So you came in as a, let's say, 27-year-old kid to run this company that's probably older than you are. How do the employees take that?
It depends on what country we were talking about. So it's a fantastic question. It was actually about my age. The company actually existed in 1952 is when it started. So the U.S. side basically completely rejected me, everything. I actually parted ways eventually from the company due to that. On the Chinese side, it was fine. There was 350 workers on the Chinese side. Part of it's a cultural thing, but then also that's where I was sent. Day in, day out, 12-hour days. I was working with the guys in the team, and so it was kind of just proving ourselves and that kind of thing.
What was the manufacturing? What were you making? What was the
So
business?
it was a company called Springfield Marine, and they make boat seats and boat parts. And so if you've ever been on a lake, there's a high likelihood that we provided the hardware that basically connected the seats to the boat.
There's a company out there that makes everything. It's like crazy to think about, but like, you just look at like,
there's like 4 companies that do that in the world, and we were one of them for the hardware side. So, but and then also culturally in China, so there's like that spoiled brat thing. Like stateside, you have 2 kinds of owners' kids, usually maybe 3, right? But one is like the traditional, what people stereotypically think an owner's kid is. They're spoiled, right? And then you have the other extreme, which is someone who has a chip on their shoulder because everyone just assumes they're spoiled, and so they're out to prove it on their own and reject any help they can. And I was definitely more in that category. So when I went to the China side, and they're working 12-hour days Monday through Friday and 2 8-hour days on Saturday, I was working right there with them for 3 years, and not necessarily like I outworked everyone, but it was just, hey, I'm right here with you. Let's problem solve. Let's get through it. Let's make your life better on the team. And stateside never saw any of that. And then also, just kind of rejected that. They were a lot more resistant to, oh, who's this young kid coming in? They don't know anything,
Totally. That's good, man. And so tell us a little bit about this 2-second lean methodology that you've been touting. What's that all about?
Yeah. So 2-second lean is the science of efficient process. It's super awesome. Basically, the short answer is everything that we do in life comes down to 2 things. Everything that every person does in life comes down to 2 things: value added or non-value added. It is either a value added activity, whatever you do, or a non-value added activity. 90% of what all of us do is a non-value added activity. And if it is, then it will fit into one of the 8 wastes. And if you can see the 8 wastes, then the human mind is creative. Doesn't matter what your education background is, you're going to figure out a way to solve it if you are aware that it exists. And so that's the short of it. 2-second lean is a cultural framework that then replicates that throughout the company. So you don't have to. Most owners are firefighters, and they're horrible at running businesses, right? If you guys are running teams, a lot of the time, I like to put it, just because you're a good baker doesn't mean you know how to run a bakery. And so 2-second lean kind of comes in and it runs the bakery for you, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Cool, man. And so how does this, translate into your real estate stuff? How did you find real estate out of all this?
So I ended up not knowing anything. I was kind of around some folks, and I had this great idea that I would buy solar panels. That was my idea. That was the whole idea, that, the secret to life is to have low expenses. And if I bought solar panels to offset everything, then I'll be fine. And I had about 180 grand. And I was like, okay, I'll buy solar panels, I guess. And so, because I was in the manufacturing background, I started bidding companies and, solar panel companies against each other. And I was also trying to teach and help them with 2-second lean, just voluntarily. Hey, did you know if this guy, had the tool in his left hand, or he had a clip on his belt, then you guys would be able to execute like 20% faster. And that would translate to like $40,000 more a year or something. So I was like helping these guys out as I was bidding them against each other. At the end of it, it turned out that because of my electrical grid near my house, I can't put the solar required on my house. And I asked the guy, I said, well, what would you do if this were your money? And he said, I would not buy my solar panels. One of the companies, the guy who I was going to go with, I wouldn't buy my solar panels. I would buy real estate with them and use that to pay for your electricity instead. And I was like, that's a very weird thing for a solar panel guy to tell me to do. Well, it turns out that he was the owner of the company, and we joke that we're still friends. We joke he ended up going out of business a few months later, but anyways, so we're sitting there at the table, we're grabbing a beer, and he's like, "Yeah, man, go to Bigger Pockets, go to YouTube, type in the word Bigger Pockets Burr, BRRRR, and watch that, and then also I would go to episode 1 and listen till you get caught up." And I said, okay, that's weird. Real estate, that's spooky. Only the big guys do it, sophisticated people. That's not for normal people, right? All the limiting beliefs that we have. And I started listening. And after I listened to Burr, I did exactly that. I went to episode 1 and I listened. I think there was like 348 episodes at the time that were out. So I just put it on 2x speed. I listened for 2 hours a night, and then I listened for 4 hours on the Sunday. And so I'd get 4 episodes done per evening, and then 8 on the weekends, I guess. So I got caught up by the end of September. And yeah, that's kind of how I started. I wasn't aware of anything else. I didn't know there was another thing. You work and then you die, right? That's what you have. That's what I knew before.
And what year was this? You said end of September.
This was this is the very end of 2019. In September of 2019. So this would have been August. So like towards the beginning of the year, it's spring. I'm bidding solar panel companies. Towards July and August, we find out, hey, you can't end up putting solar panels on your house. So it's probably August at that point. And so I just spent August listening to all the podcasts. By the end of August, I was caught up in the 300. They didn't even have the rookie podcast at the time, because I remember I applied to be on the BP show and was like, hey, you should interview me because I don't know what I'm doing, and this would be a cool thing.
Did you ever make it to episode 350?
Yeah. I got caught up.
Because you said 348, but I don't know if you stopped listening, because I was episode 350. So
I just got caught up in a very short amount of time.
Okay, and then you kept listening. Okay, good.
I kept listening. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Cool. So sounds like, where were you at this time? Like, where in the country?
So I was in the United States. At that time, I was flying back and forth. So I'd spend about 70% of my year in China, and then I'd fly back. So I'd be there for, I think the limit for my visa was 90 days at a time. And so we were doing 996s is their thing. Actually, we were doing 995s and 2 8-hour days. So it was 12 hours every day. When I was back here, I just basically kind of collapsed. I still went in the office, checked some emails, and helped coordinate things as I could from the US side, learn the quality stuff and send it back. So I was doing this on nights and weekends effectively. And that was kind of the first time I really realized I could learn still, because I have like severe ADHD. And so listening at 2x speed is what allowed me to actually learn for the first time, probably since college. And that was really super interesting stuff. So by the end of August, it's like September, I'm caught up, and they're like, hey, start making offers, run the numbers, make offers. So September 18th, I started my real estate company, and then I just started making offers. And then I made an offer on one property. It was like a turnkey. It was like 57 grand or something after repair value, which is probably crazy for you guys out there in Denver. And it got denied because I offered them 57 grand and I think they wanted like 70 or something. And then I was running numbers on properties. And so every day I'd run, I think they suggested like 5 numbers a day, right? Run 5 deals a day and just practice. You'll pick up trends that way. So we were looking at a property. It was me. I didn't even have a core 4 yet. I just had a real estate agent who was investor friendly. And then I found a property to look at. We go to look at the property. We can't find it. My agent trips over a piece of concrete in the sidewalk into this really sketchy house. And I look at the house and I recognize it from one of the pictures. It's also for sale. And he's like, yeah, make an offer on that house too. I don't care. let's do it. We'll see what happens, right? Because I had a rejection at that point. He's like, hey man, he calls me later. This is a part of a 26 unit portfolio. They're all crack houses. Why don't you buy them all? And he was the first person to really challenge me and be like, what do you mean buy them all? And so the very first house I ever bought, no primary residence, no nothing. The math said to buy this 26 unit portfolio of crack houses. By the way, you don't have a core 4. You don't know what you're doing. You've never done this before. Just do it. And by that stage, Bigger Pockets, they're like, hey, don't do analysis of paralysis. Take the emotion out. Just take action. And so I was like, I don't know what to do, but I'll probably be able to figure it out. So that was the first purchase I ever had, was a 26 unit crack house portfolio.
Chad, you know what this sounds like?
I do.
This is the real deal. All right, Hugh. So you kind of told us how you found the deal, right? Basically putting an offer in on one house, and just so happens there's a bunch of others. Tell us like how this whole thing went down. Like, I mean, I know you didn't buy 26 houses cash.
I did not buy 26 houses cash.
And just location too. What part of the country?
So I'm in the Midwest market. I'm in the third largest city in Missouri. It's called Springfield, Missouri. It's definitely a cash flow market, although now it's changing, but back then it was definitely a cash flow market. We're starting to get to be appreciation. We can't cash flow as easily now. And we found this 26 unit portfolio, and based on the 1% rule of thumb, it was like 1.55 or something like that.
Why did you emphasize the thumb?
Oh, because the BP guys are like, don't say 1% rule anymore. They're like, do rule of thumb. And the main thing is really it's the 0.8% rule. Anyways, the rule of thumb for the 1% rule just roughs out the math really quickly. Should I even pursue looking at this anymore? Or is it not going to cash flow at all? So that's kind of the gist of it. So they wanted $1.5 million for it. And it said, the 1% rule said, it was like $1.3 million is what it should be worth, meaning that it was pulling in about $13,000 a month. It had 5 vacancies, and I included that in the 5 vacancies. But market rents were also about 30 to 40% below what they should have been of the units that were rented, but they're all crack houses. So they're like in super duper bad shape with all the problems associated with that. So we go back and forth, we negotiate. My real estate agent, I've never really done this, so they really were awesome. And finally, I think we read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And I was like, put in a weird offer with weird numbers. And I was like, make it 1.1, $1,117,338.16 or something super specific and odd. That was like, we went back and forth, and then I said, hit him with that number. And we did. And they actually accepted that offer.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. So it was 2019. I can't remember what the interest rate was, but it roughed out to, it was probably pulling in $12,000 a month. And I think my note on it was $5.573. Sorry, $5,500 and some change. And that's kind of where I started. And then that's what the math, I was like, the math says that I'm pulling in, $8,000 right now, give or take. I should be able to withhold this. And if worst case scenario, I'll sell off a house or 2 or 3 and buy me some time to figure it out.
So if you're buying a $1.1 million portfolio here, I mean, you're not putting 5% down. You got to probably do at least 20 or 25%. So where did you come up with this 250, 300 grand?
Yeah. So I don't do what I did. I was an idiot. But I was too dumb to know that I was an idiot. So I had this money for the solar panels, right? And I told you earlier that I have 180 grand, and that was true when I was buying the solar panels, but that's not real. That's not the whole story. So the whole story is for 8 years leading up to this, I probably was at a 50% savings rate after I exited college. I didn't know what I was saving for. I didn't know really about investing. And I heard about the ESOP, employee stock purchase plan, ESPP. And I had one of those through one of my old companies. So I just kept investing in that. And what also caused me to move back was a divorce. I got to keep the ESOP because I owned the shares before I got married. And then rumors from all my old friends back at that work were like, oh my gosh, it's going to hit $300 a share. And oh, it's going to hit $300 a share. And I had a whole bunch of shares. So I set a limit order and I thought if there's news that it's going to hit $300 a share, they're probably going to put it, some marketing or media companies trying to play it at $295 a share where they'll actually sell off and cause the stock to crash. So I put my limit order at 290 grand. I wake up one morning in China to an email that says I have $221,000 in my mutual fund or whatever, the money market account. And at this point, I'm like, oh, I'll buy solar panels with it. So that was my grand idea. I needed 20% down, which, what was that? Yeah. So I didn't have enough money and I owed taxes on the $221,000. So I really only had 180 grand, but the math on the deal said buy it and I'll figure it out. I have until April to figure it out. So I would then convince a family member to loan me 50 grand and I use that and my down payment and don't pay my taxes. And I go and use it as a down payment to buy the property. And that was my very first thing. No reserves, no core four. I had one person of the core four and no plan. And so that was me buying my first property.
Talk about just going all in, like with the blindfold, like jumping in off a diving board with a blindfold on. You don't know what's below you.
Well, the math said do it, so I did.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So it's good that you kind of had the courage and the ability to do that. And so like then what happened after that? Like you took the deal down. You got these 26 crack houses. So like there's some work you got to do.
So I start making offers, right? This is September of 2019 at this time. I got this offer accepted in November or something. And then we closed December 30th, 2019. This is just before COVID starts, right? And so I buy these crack house portfolio, don't know what I'm doing. And things work out. Then COVID starts and we really weren't really impacted. So what I was doing is I was selling off things I owned. I had, what I was selling additional stock. I was taking the additional cash flow and funding the renovations myself. I wasn't swinging the hammer because I was working full time at the time. And I just kept stabilizing the properties. And so after about 10 months, I went back to the bank and was like, hey, look, I have I think I stabilized 5 properties at the time. Hey, I have all these 5 properties. I really want to refinance. And the bank was like, no. And by the way, I went to 16 banks and they're like, you've never done this before. You have no experience. You have no other assets. No. So I had a whole bunch say no to me. And then the 16th, and I said no to a few. And the 16th bank said yes. That's when I bought them. So I'm grateful that they gave me a chance. I said, I thank you for giving me the chance, but your rates aren't great. I think I was on a 20-year AM at the time. And I was like, nationwide, I've got this rates and these AMs, like, can you guys work with me? And they eventually said no. So I shopped it back around after 5 were flipped. So it was probably October, 10 months later, October of 2020. They had brought interest rates down or started to because COVID was happening and the value started to go up on the properties. That was unintended consequence. And I refinanced and I pulled out $279,000 into a 30-year AM on a 5-year fixed. So I blew right past. I didn't even know that conventional debt was available to me. I blew right past it because I had more than 26 properties or more than the 10. Right. And so I've always lived in the commercial space with worse terms and you just have to be very careful about the math. So I used that money. I paid off taxes and was able to figure everything else out. I think actually I performed one BRRRR early on, paid my taxes with it. Then I paid the family member back and then I pulled out the 270.
Dang. And so do you still have that portfolio today?
I do have most of it. After that, it was the height of COVID. COVID was just starting. So I ended up buying a lot of stuff was coming on the market. So more little houses, but then I started getting into small apartment complexes, commercial and multifamily. And so by the time you've flipped 5 crack houses or have done 5 projects, whatever it is, if you've house hacked it, by the time you've done 3, honestly, you really, really have a very good understanding of the real estate market, how it all works, how it functions, what a subfloor costs, what toilets cost, what things that can go, So I got beat up pretty bad for the first year, but I was getting paid the whole time. So it was like I was getting paid to get a college education. It was awesome.
Were you still were you still working in China at this time, or when did you end up leaving that?
So I was still working for the company and working in China. I stopped going to China because they were if you think back to early COVID, they were having COVID happen. And I was actually supposed to get on a plane and fly over there. And I just didn't want to go because I was exhausted and I just didn't want to go. And I ended up staying. This is before anybody knew about anything about COVID. And about a week after that is when the first cases in Wuhan started happening. And then we decided to not go. I stayed stateside and basically worked graveyard hour shifts and, was doing Zoom calls and stuff with the Chinese and we kept the plant running and as best we could because they actually had much more severe lockdowns than we did. So
Do you speak Mandarin?
I do. I speak Mandarin fluently. If you are on a phone with me and you can't see me, then you think I'm from Shanghai or the Midwest area. So I have an accent, but the accent is
Like a Chinese dialect.
of their version of Midwest. Yeah. And then, but what'll give me away is idioms. So like I'll use American idioms. I'll directly translate them.
Oh,
And
they
then
won't get
they'll
it.
be like, what? Yeah. Cause like one time I was like, don't put a Band-Aid on that machine, fix it. And they're like, why would we put an adhesive medical strip on this machine? And I was like, you should address the root problem. Don't just come up with a solution that temporarily fixes it. And I had to like explain the idiom.
That's actually pretty funny. I always love the cross country
That's
references that Americans like don't get. This one's like a pretty basic that I've heard a couple times, but I was friends with this couple like French people before, and they used to always call toes foot fingers, and I just thought that was like the funniest thing. But I mean, I get it,
And you speak Mandarin too, don't you? Because your wife's Mandarin. Or speaks
I
Mandarin.
wish it worked that way, that like I married a Chinese woman and therefore I get to speak the language that her parents and her ancestors speak. I wish, but no, I know a few words, but that's about as far as I can go.
This episode of Investify was brought to you by the FI team, a team of investor-friendly agents that service all 50 states. If you are looking to house hack, to invest, grow your portfolio, and want a true investor-friendly agent on your side, go to thefiteam.com and click Get Started, and we can't wait to have a good conversation with you.
Cool. So, all right, man. So you got this 26 unit portfolio. Curious, like when you were refinancing, like you bought it for 1.1 and change. You negotiate it down from 1.3. What was it worth, kind of on that refinance? Like even if you don't remember the exact number, like
I can tell you exactly. So 279 divided by 0.85. That's not right.
0.15 maybe.
1.86 would have been at the
Wow.
time.
So $700,000 gain in 10-month period. Just because you got
a lot of that was there was many factors, right? The main one was I was flipping a lot of the properties and I really raised income. And on a commercial asset, just raising rent, even if you raise rent by $20, well, $20 times 26 houses is a lot. I also had 5 vacancies at the time when I bought the portfolio, which counted against the cap rate. So I just some of them I could just fill the vacancies. Other ones I had to renovate and then fill. And then that brought the net income way up. And because you divide it by the cap rate in commercial properties, when they evaluate it, it's because the cap rate's on the bottom, then it makes the property worth way more.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit about how you evaluate commercial properties and the formula that you're alluding to here? No idioms, please.
Right. So, and I am not smart. I got a D for diploma in college. And so I've never really used finance and everything before. But the cap rate is basically, if there's no loan against it, what is your ROI? So if you have a 10% cap rate, you mean, if you buy something for $100,000, a 10% cap rate means you're getting $1,000 a month or something like that. And so the cap rate, when commercial properties are being evaluated, they have a fancy formula because they're run as businesses. And when you run something as a business, they're designed to have income versus a residential real estate, which these were all single family portfolios. It was a single family homes, but it was valued as a commercial property because it was a business portfolio. And so they evaluated it based on what we bought it for, divided by the cap rate, what the percent ROI was. And then when you increase the net operating income, it's basically the profit. So either you increase your monthly rent or you decrease your expenses. That is on the top of the equation. It's something you have to ask more folks about, but it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's a simple formula. And if you YouTube it or whatever, obviously we can't do visuals on a podcast, but I mean this it's like algebra 1, which is like great because you really don't need to learn no more than algebra 1 when you're investing. Yeah, it's like if you're looking for the value of a place, you've got the net operating income, which is simply revenue minus expenses, divided by the market set cap rate. In rural Missouri, that might be 10%. In downtown LA, it might be 2%. Typically, the lower the cap rate, the more expensive the houses are, and then that's how you kind of come up with the value. And so the two ways,
and the less money you make.
yeah. And so the way I kind of like to look at it is like on a commercial product, you think about like forced appreciation versus market appreciation. Your forced appreciation is the net operating income. You can increase revenue, you can reduce expenses. That's what you actually can do to increase the value. The cap rate is the market appreciation. You can't really do anything. You just got to hope that people are buying into the market addresses for you. And if that cap rate comes down, I mean, that's a massive multiplier for you. So
yeah, and it's pretty, and also, we're buying really bad properties, we're renovating them, we're bringing them up safe, we're making them safe, we're making them nice, and now all of a sudden you're looking at, I mean, I think it was like a rule of thumb was averaged out. I had bought the houses for like 34 grand or something like that. So they were worth more anyways, just being valuated as a single family home, as a portfolio. But I got the quote discount because they were in rough shape, and I bought all of them at once from that company or the couple who wanted to retire.
How did you build your team to do the renovations, or did you do the renovations yourself?
So I did not do that. There was no real estate meetup in town. Well, there was, but you had to pay for it, and I wasn't going to do that at the time. And so I listened to this podcast. It was one of the bigger pockets podcast. There's some dude who wouldn't drive across an island to go see Brandon Turner, so he started his own podcast at a pizza place on the other side of Hawaii, or whatever island they were on. And on that podcast, they're like, if you don't have a real estate meetup, you should start one locally, and you can do that. And so I was a Bigger Pockets Pro member, so I started a podcast. I'd also heard about Shelby Osborne's Pints and Properties. And so I just started a Pints and Properties local chapter meetup here. And it was just local investors. People from Bigger Pockets found that, and then we started that up. So I started getting referrals and recommendations from other real estate investors for finding contractors that would help, because you can't use a forever home contractor. You'll go bankrupt immediately.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing to do, of just like taking action, right? If you didn't have it, so just make it come to you. It's amazing.
Yeah, it sounded, I mean, well, a lot of the stuff was just smart. And this is a 2-second lean principle. Smart people refuse to believe how simple it can be. And so if you're listening to this, Investify podcast, then you probably are a very high achiever, or you think highly, or maybe you're type A, or you're driven to some degree. Often those people have analysis paralysis because they refuse to believe they can be this simple. I'm here to tell you that I am not special. I am below average intelligence, and I was a D student. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And the difference between me and people who don't is that I'm trying and failing at a rate that's alarmingly fast compared to other people. It's not that I'm, better. It's that I tried something and I failed almost immediately with micro steps. I'm continuously moving the ball forward, and I'm figuring out what doesn't work. Where other people, they plan, and then when their plan goes wrong, they have no idea, they go back to the drawing board. Now, just jump in, and you're going to be taught very quickly what needs to happen. Don't do what I did, but you can do it on a very small scale, very, very easy.
Yeah, with the ready, fire, aim kind of thing, or fire, aim, whatever. The opposite of ready, aim, fire. Yeah. Awesome, dude. Well, hey, this is great. And so this portfolio is now stabilized. You've got it refinanced.
I sold off 9 properties to my contractor. So I built a good lasting relationship to my contractor. I had good debt against it. And so I actually sold 9 of my unturned properties. This was last year in 2023. I sold them to my contractor because I was like, hey man, why aren't you in real estate? He's like, I am in real estate. And I said, no, you're not. You're replaceable. You're a cog in the machine. You should get into real estate. At that point, he had been with me for 2 to 3 years, seen what I've done. And I was like, you can easily do this. So I sold it to him and I carried his down payment so he could use his money to renovate the properties. And so I sold off 9 of that initial portfolio. It had already been replaced in the back end with some apartment complexes and that kind of a thing.
So what is that initial portfolio, at least the 15 or 17 properties you've got left of it? What does that cash flow you today?
I don't look at my portfolio with like that small chunk versus other small chunks. I think cash flow wise, I keep expanding. I think I, on average, pull in $24,000 to $26,000 a month, give or take, across my whole portfolio. My debt service and all the expenses and stuff are like $22,000. And then, that's assuming nothing goes wrong. So I'm only in the clear about $3,000, give or take, but I'm also intentionally spreading myself as thin as I can with the debt to acquire more. Again, why would I do that? At a worst case scenario, I sell off maybe a third of my portfolio, even at a fire sale, and I can pay off half or most or 2/3 of my debt. And oh no, I have to figure out how to live off of like 15 grand cleared forever. That's my worst case right now. So it's definitely doable. And that's why that's honestly, the numbers gave me the confidence to do it the first time with the math, right? The math said pulling in 12 grand, the loan is 5 grand. I'm going to have expenses. I don't know what I'm doing. I can probably figure this out. And I already had a skill set of managing people. You only need to manage 4 people, right? Your core 4 to be a good investor. And you don't even have to do that very well.
Gotcha, man. Cool. So that's, it's amazing to see kind of the scale, and you're kind of in that reinvest, not worrying about the cash flow now, but just trying to grow that as big as possible so that you can have more cash flow later. Where are you I guess you mentioned multifamily properties. And so, how did you kind of foray into that, and how did you feel comfortable doing so?
Yeah. I'm going to say, I don't think it's controversial. Lots of people, anyone who's done it is not going to think it's controversial, but I think multifamily is way easier than single family homes. So right now, I think I scaled up to like 300 some odd doors between myself, maybe personally like 115 or something. And then I scaled it way back. I started selling stuff off. So I think I don't know, maybe I'm at 220 doors or something. Doors don't matter. It's more about cash flow. And the first one I saw was there's a sweet spot, and they probably exist in every market. And the sweet spot is like above a 4-plex. So you're at 5-plex, but below a 20-plex. What I started finding is it's too big for like a normal investor to buy, but it's too small. There's not enough meat on the bone for an organization to care about, right? So if it's a syndication, they're going to go after 25 plus doors or 50 doors or something like that. And so you have this weird neglected spot. Almost all of them are owned by mom and pops who are miserable, have no systems, and maybe no debt. And they bought it, back in 73 for $30,000. And now there's a roof leak, and the roof is going to cost $35,000 to repair the roof. It breaks their brain, right? And they're like, I'm not doing that. Well, then 10 years go by, and then I show up and I'm like, your thing's super bad. Your rents are $400 a month, and they should be, $800 a month. How about I buy it from you? And when you buy a small multifamily, you've got one roof, you've got 1 to 2 water heaters. So you have all of the issues that you have with a single family home all in one place. In my opinion, it's significantly easier. The return on investment's way, way better because you can get again, it's on a commercial based thing. And I'm actually stepping a little bit out of my comfort zone now where I'm able to get agency debt. So I'm back into Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac territory because the apartments have $1 million or more against the apartments for loans. So when I burr back out, I've got 30-year debt again, which is unheard of in the commercial space.
Why is that? You have 30-year debt on it? Is it because they're worth $1 million or more?
Yeah. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac have a multifam programs, and most commercial debt is 5-year fixed, 20-year amortizations, or 25-year amortizations if you're lucky. Very rarely do they have 30-year amortizations. And so when you go to a multifamily, the government is wanting to incentivize people to go and flip apartments and have housing for people. And one of the ways they incentivize that is they have agencies, right? Fannie or Freddie will back a 30-year mortgage for an apartment, and it's non-recourse, which is nice.
Amazing. Yeah. Cool, man. I mean, that's all. I mean, this is all, I mean, phenomenal information for anyone listening that, obviously Hugh jumped right in. I'm still going to stick back to what I say, where I think it makes a lot of sense to like start with a house hack and then maybe buy 2 properties and then you go buy 26 or something after you got some more experience under your belt. I mean, Hugh, you're
I would not do what I do.
Yeah, Hugh, your story is amazing, and I think a lot of people, and I got saved by COVID on a deal as well. I don't think you got saved by COVID, but COVID definitely helped you tremendously and made your story like, oh my gosh, and it's hard to like go back or expect that to ever happen again. You can't assume property prices will increase like that.
Well, when I run the deals too, again, and here's one of the things I would suggest if you haven't bought yet, or if you have, you're an experienced investor. I even did this recently. Go back to OG Bigger Pockets, which was filmed around 2012. They were interviewing people that had just come out of the Great Recession, and they were interviewing people who made it and those who lost everything and what they did and what they didn't do. And so those fundamentals are really what I internalized, and I never underwrote. It seems like I'm being dangerous, scaling. I'm taking very calculated risks, but I'm guaranteeing my debt. So it's definitely a big thing is forcing the appreciation and making sure that we were able to don't bank on the market. I don't really care what the market does. I buy a deal and I make it happen.
How do you find your deals?
So now got a wholesaling company locally, and that is purely for lead flow. We keep what we want, and if it's not in our buy box, we pass it on. A lot of it's word of mouth. I have the Pints and Properties Meetup, and I think last year there was like $640,000 transacted through that Meetup, which in our market is very big because our home sizes are 50 grand or so. So that's just word of mouth, just being finding stuff. Early on, I found it on the MLS. So there are mom and pops out there who are like, I'm not paying no agent, nothing. Meh. And then they'll like have no idea what they're doing, and they'll list their and they'll lose 15% because they didn't want to lose 6% to an agent or something like that. So
yeah, that always breaks my heart as an agent. I'm just like, it really is in your best interest to sign somebody that says that they're a fiduciary to you and they're like by law required to do what's in your financial best interest. But, that's just me. Anyway, cool, man. So so you've got, a handful of units now. You mentioned like 200 and something right now, but it feels like that by tomorrow could be 100 more or 100 less because of how much, how active you are. What's your goal? Like, where do you want to get to?
I don't know. Really, since the market changed July of 22, we put buying on like a super hold, and we're just being very opportunist. So when we buy, you can buy like turnkey stuff now, stuff that was unimaginable back when I started, right? I feel almost like I get a cheat in investing like a house hacker does, where they're like, oh, I just move in with base debt and things are super nice and it's not real junky. Like, that's the way I feel. Like there's so much pain in the market now, or have been over the last 6 months to a year and a half, 18 months now. Now, all of a sudden we're looking at people having to let go of properties, and you can get, a pretty good deal, or you can negotiate a lot of creative finance, which is awesome. We just had a guy do 100% seller carry, and we took the loan, we took the house over for free, and that's awesome. So there's all kinds of things that are out there.
So in what scenario would somebody give us that scenario, give us that as a case study?
Sure, I'll give you that. We'll use that exact one. I forget the address, but basically the dude, wants to sell his 2-1, and a 2-1 here for a wholesaler to make any money on it, or an investor, you need to have it for about 80 grand. And because of market rates, right? And so we showed him the numbers and we said, listen, we can, here's what the rates are. So in cash, we're pulling this from a line of credit, but in cash, we can only offer you $60,000 for this house. You want 80 grand. We'll give you the 80 grand, right? You're a mom and pop, you're tired, you're a landlord. There's no debt against his house. He's, I think, in his late 70s. When we showed up to walk the property, he was like raking leaves. He was so exhausted, right? And he's 75, right? And so we're like, hey, we can give you 80 grand for your house, but we can either buy it right now for 60 grand, or if you let us pay you be the bank, we'll take it over for 80 grand. Let us pay you for the next 15 years, $450 a month. I mean, how much are you making from your tenant? And then you got to lose all that money to, keeping up with the place anyways. Mm-hmm. And so we negotiated, we said, your house is in rough shape. We need to, instead of giving you a down payment, we're going to use that to fix the property up instead. And if we stop paying you anytime in the next 15 years, you get your property back. How's that sound? And they said, absolutely. That sounds like a win-win. And you can do that in Denver or Idaho all day long, because you've got someone who bought that property a long time ago who's exhausted, that has no systems and processes. And it's just because my numbers are small, the fundamentals are the same. Totally. You can do that anywhere.
100%. Totally agree with you, man. I love that, man. And seller financing is definitely a thing that's really taken the industry by storm in the last couple of years. And again, it's a tool to the tool belt, right? I don't think you can build an entire business just on one strategy, because as the market changes, things change. And so burring right now is insanely hard. I don't hear about anybody burring. 5 years ago, that's all anyone would ever talk about. And so now, we're adapting, and I think it's great, man. And so, Hugh, man, it's been great to have you on. We're going to head into the final part of our show, but before we do, any parting words of wisdom for the listeners?
I'm going to say, if you're, younger listening to this, or even not, if you're unattached, or if you are attached and you have the fortitude to, I would do like Craig suggests and jump into a house hack as quickly as you can. Underwrite the deal, make sure that it makes sense, but you can really invest well in high cost of living areas. Craig was one of the first people I ever listened to. And I try to, if I could go back to 20-year-old me, I would do that all day long. Another thing, whether it's a house hack, whether it's a crack house where you're forcing appreciation or burring or flipping or whatever, just take action. When you start with the first thing, you're going to end up learning so much more going through one transaction than you will the entire time. By the second time, you're going to be clunky, but kind of know what to expect. And by the third time, you're an old hat at that. And there's not much that's going to catch you out of the ordinary. And it's very repeatable. And it also doesn't matter what country you're in, right? Your listeners are probably predominantly from the States, but I talk to people and I'm helping them through this in Australia and UK, and they have way worse debt than we do. And it's totally doable. The fundamentals absolutely apply. And just smart people refuse to believe how simple it can be. Just try it.
Yep. Don't be too smart. Just go do it. Yeah. Awesome. All right, man. You ready to hit the final part of the show, Chad?
I am. Let's do it.
It's time for the final four. Kick us off, dude.
Yeah, Hugh, what book are you currently reading?
Ooh, what book am I currently reading? Currently, I'm listening to The Gap and the Gain. Can't remember who it's by. Fantastic book. It really, if you're type A or you're driven, it forces you to think through how you compare yourself against yourself, and can really shed some light on just respecting yourself and really getting yourself a far, far better mindset than you previously were.
Love it, man. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I've ever received. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one. I remember something from my dad. He said, must have been really, really young. And it was basically, if you look for the good in people, you'll very seldom find the bad. It's old timey Midwestern kind of philosophy. And I try to give everybody the benefit of that when I meet them. So I think it served me well. Get you far, just not being an
Yeah, 100%.
Next question is, what is your why?
What is my why? That's a great question. I think I've been financially independent and retired since 15 months after I bought those properties. And I think my why is to help other people, help investors. I have a company called Small Biz Rescue, and it doesn't matter what you do, but it basically teaches business owners, right? Early on, I said, just because you're a baker doesn't mean you know how to run a bakery. Well, there's so many business owners. And if you're in real estate, you are running a business, whether you think you are or not. There's so many people that were good at the thing. And so they started a business around that thing, and they're actually bad at running businesses. So I think it's to help them achieve and save the world, right? You guys, if I can help you or grow your podcast or grow your team, you guys are going to go and you're going to help other people accomplish their goals and their dreams. And everyone who listens to you and gets inspired to become financially independent is going to then carry that out and trickle that out into the world. So it's really, I've been given a gift of being successful and some fundamentals that are very easy to follow. I follow them, and I'm just trying to teach those and pass it forward and just be that example for people of what is achievable, regardless of what situation you're in.
Love that, man. All right, you ready for the last question? How long do you think you would survive in a zombie apocalypse?
Man, a zombie apocalypse. What kind of zombies are we talking here?
We're talking dead people that came back to life, humans.
It's okay. Does it matter where we're at in the world?
It happens right now. You're at where you're
right
staying.
now,
you
right
cut
here.
off this podcast and there's zombies at your door.
I'm going to say I give myself 6 months.
6 months.
Oh, I have a nuclear fallout shelter. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I've got a nuclear missile silo. It's 6 hours from Denver, about 5 hours from here. And we can close the door and stay until the food and water run out. So
yeah,
if we really needed to.
There we go. That's what I was going for, man.
I'd say 6 months.
Yeah.
Other humans will probably kill me first.
Yeah, fair enough. Awesome, man. Where can people find out more about you?
I have a website called hughcarnahan.com. And you can find out more about that. And I've got 2 podcasts, one called FU Money and one called Small Biz Rescue. So you guys can find me in any of those places.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, it's good. It's good to see you. It's good to have you on. We'll be in touch for sure we'll be in touch a lot. Well, I'm sure I'll see you at BBCon. I'll see you. I feel like I see you. Not enough, but I do see you.
Yeah, we'll have to go and visit the homesteading conference, whenever that is. So
yes, you got to come up for that for sure. Cool, man.
Cool.
Well, thanks for having me on again, guys. And you guys keep on spreading the good word.
All right, later, man. And that was Hugh Carnahan. Chad, what'd you think about Hugh?
That is a crazy story. It's amazing. I mean, what he just from his dad's company and transitioning to all those houses that he had really no idea what he was doing and just figured it out and absolutely crushing it in such a short amount of time. I mean, kind of speechless, really.
I know. I mean, it's funny. We were like, just buy one house at a time. Just buy one house at a time. Clearly, Hugh did not do any research and did not listen, did not really, he was just like, well, I can buy 26 houses under one fell swoop. I guess I'll do that for $1.1 million. Now, those houses obviously are quite cheap, right? They're like $30,000 a pop. But still, like the idea that the fact that he had the courage, the knowledge, the wits, the wherewithal to actually do that, take it down, right size a lot of them, sell a handful of them, keep a couple of them. I think like it's a really cool, very unique story that, again, like I don't want to say he got lucky because he put himself out there and he knew he had the right resources at the right time to take down a 26 unit portfolio. So financial independence is really can be closer than you think. if you take a really, really big step like that, right? Of course, there's some risk there and there's some courage that's got to be done. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And his father's age is still pretty mind-blowing.
I still can't believe that. He said he was born in 1929. He's literally older than like all of my grandparents.
Yeah.
And I think Hugh might even be older than me. So it's even, what's that?
It's just a crazy story. He's a hustler, and great story to hear of Hughes.
Yeah, 100%, man. Cool. Well, if you guys got here all the way to the end, we appreciate you. We love you. We thank you. Please leave us a rating and review if you can. Give us a follow on Instagram. I'm the Fi Guy. Chad is
Rocky the Realtor.
Rocky the Realtor. We'll see you guys all next week.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.